The Rites of Passage was written by Arnold van Gennep in 1909. It describes the rituals people had to undergo when crossing the boundaries of social status or time. It's designed to reconstruct the original roles of people and present them with their new ones. Van Gennep discovered the tripartite sequence in most rituals, which includes separation, transition, and incorporation. After a person has underwent the rites of passage, they will normally become a new person, a person who's developed a new set of attitudes and values. In order to do this, they will also have to overcome any complications in the past and any traumas.
The purpose of Requiem for a Beast is to show the transition from adolescence to adulthood, modelling what the rite of passage is in an Australian context. By doing so, it gives voice to Indigenous Australians, which shows a parallel between their story and the story of the boy. Requiem shows the audience how people from very different backgrounds can still find common ground. It challenges the romanticised idea of the bush and shows how detrimental toxic masculinity could be to a young boy's mind. In the transition, Matt Otley portrays how a little boy can evolve within Australian culture. This process is complicated by the romanticised idea of the bush and toxic masculinity.
Context. Matt Otley's transition from adolescence to adulthood is a powerful example of the themes of rites of passage. As a young adult, he struggles with feelings of isolation and the challenges of navigating toxic masculinity. However, through his journey, he was able to develop a deeper understanding of himself and his place in the world. For Otley, his experience allowed him to embrace his unique identity and find a sense of belonging within himself and his community. This process of self-discovery is a critical aspect of the transition from adolescence to adulthood, and it highlights the importance of rites of passage in providing individuals with the tools and resources they need to navigate this challenging period of life.
Requiem for a Beast is suited for mainly mature audiences, as it explores sensitive topics that young adults may face. This includes racism, xenophobia, toxic masculinity, and isolation. These issues can have a profound impact during the transitional phase of teenagers to adulthood. This emphasizes the need for them to acquire knowledge about a certain topic. It is also aimed towards Australians, as the book explores the idea of stolen generation and also the toxic masculinity surrounding the Stockman culture.
The three main phases of the rite of passage involve separation, transition, and return. The first stage of separation is when an individual leaves their old environment for a new one to look for their new identity. This can involve physical, emotional, or spiritual separation. The transition phase of the rite of passage gives the individual a new perspective of the world by going through various challenges. These challenges could be mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, or even educational. The last stage of return is the reintegration of an individual to their previous society, usually with a new perspective of the world and a new identity. To complete the stage of return, usually there will be a ceremony or ritual to signify the completion of the rite of passage. These three components of the rite of passage gives tools and experiences to an individual to navigate through life's challenges and is a vital aspect of cultural or personal transitions into a new era.
Why is it important? Understanding the basic components of rites of passage is important for interpreting the themes and messages of Requiem for a Beast, because the novel is centered around the protagonist's journey from adolescence to adulthood. By recognizing the three distinct phases of separation, transition, and return, readers can better understand the challenges and growth that the protagonist experiences. Additionally, by recognizing these phases, readers can identify key moments and events within the narrative that mark significant milestones in the protagonist's development. Ultimately, understanding the concept of rites of passage provides a useful framework for interpreting the novel's themes of growth, self-discovery, and the challenges of navigating the transition to adulthood.
Childhood experiences shape how a person develops from a child to an adult. This is because children can be heavily influenced by the people around them, such as the parents or any other significant role model, as they model their attitudes and beliefs through what surrounds them. They also base their values, attitudes, and morals off of their opinions and perceptions, such as the dominating culture within the family or even the powerful stereotype they may hold. Children normally observe the way parents handle certain confronting situations and will start to mimic how they act and react. The attitudes that children develop towards people are also influenced by the early experiences with their parents and how they interact with them. This is why a good upbringing will always lead to a smooth transition from an adolescent to a
During the boy's childhood, he overheard a conversation between his father and his father's friend that introduced him to a skewed but widely accepted perspective of ridiculing people that are unlike others. In this specific case, it was the prejudice of Indigenous Australians. The conversation didn't influence the boy's opinions on Indigenous Australians right away, but as he got older, he related and connected to the nation's people due to the consistent alienated feelings he experienced from his surrounding society.
During the boy's childhood, his dad told him stories romanticizing the idea of the bush. During this period, where he idolized his dad's past, the boy uncovers a deep, dark secret of the boy on the bridge. This story refers to the past on how his father and fellow stockmen drove an innocent Aboriginal kid to death just because of his colour. In addition to this was the discovery of the elder's story about the stolen generation and how it links to the boy on the bridge. But why? Why has he never done anything about it? That's what disturbs me, the silence. Questions arose regarding the dad's actions, shaking the boy's inner beast and future complications with his transition to adulthood.
During any childhood period, socializing and communicating with other people is totally normal and is actually helpful in developing the idea of how to interact with people in the future. This is shown in the book when the boy is confronted with the opportunity to meet with a new popular kid. He feels the need to impress and puts a lot of effort in creating a paper plane. When he presents his paper plane to his father and he asks him to make it look better, the dad rejects him. And sadly, this will have a detrimental effect to the relationship between themselves, as he already has a confusing, alienating idea of his dad. This will later complicate his relationship with him. The boy has now arrived at the popular kid's birthday party, as he confidently walks and gives him the present. Although, the kid accuses the boy of gifting him something he wants to get rid of. The boy is now a subject of rejection once again. After getting tormented, ridiculed, and embarrassed, the boy walks alone in loneliness and despair. The high-angle shot creates a sense of inferiority and a sense he feels alienated and isolated from everyone, as there is one lone figure in the whole entire neighborhood. The parents now are trying to make him happy. To do this, the father takes the boy to the museum to cheer him up. It was now his first time of being in awe of his dad, and perhaps the first time he told himself he wanted to be like him. Although he later contradicts this statement, saying he wanted to be him, but also felt he'd let him down. This is also supported by the fact that he said, "I was sort of removed in adoration of a man I couldn't quite trust." This alludes to the story of the boy on the bridge, discovering the dark past of his father, later complicating his relationship with him, and developing the inner beast within him. This is exactly why the boy's relationship with his father is complex. He admires his father and emulates him, but at the same time he feels let down by him. The narrator's sense of being removed from him suggests emotional distance, while his adoration of him highlights how he is affected by his father's actions and presence in his life. The relationship between him and his father is ambiguous and uncertain. This reflects the nature of family dynamics and emotions that arise within them. This later carries on in the rite of passage.
The build-up of childhood trauma and the contradictory relationship between him and his dad led him to the first stage of separation. The first stage of separation occurs when the boy begins to embark on his journey to find his true identity. He does this by leaving home and pursuing the career of a stockman. His mother saw the significance in his decision, which showed into his need for independence and supported this. The disconnection from his family allows the boy to develop his own values and morals. Even while following the same path as his dad, he will still create his own perceptions and attitude to do with his past childhood trauma.
After effects of separation. After the first stage of separation, the boy feels alienated and isolated from society. He relates to Ellie in the fact that the boy feels trapped and suffocated where he is now, but also feels a sense of belonging and purpose. This is due to the interest and connection he feels in discovering about Indigenous culture. By doing this, he is developing and formulating attitudes and perceptions of Indigenous Australians after being surrounded by a society filled with normalised racism.
During the boy's first encounter with the bull, which is now known as the beast, he stares into its soul. This picture of the soul slowly transitions into a close-up shot of an Aboriginal girl, which is shown in the previous pages and on the front cover of the book. This Aboriginal girl represents the stolen generation, as she looks scared, timid, and oppressed. This also alludes to the story of the boy on the bridge and how it greatly affected his mindset and perceptions of Indigenous Australians, as well as affecting his relationship with his dad. He comes face to face and is confronted with his gradually increased issues in his childhood. This mental challenge and confrontation is essential in him to change as a person and to develop his own perceptions of Aboriginal people. The parallel between the boy's rite of passage and Indigenous stories continues.
In the boy's transition to discovering his new identity, he is faced with the dilemma of entering the community hall. The picture of the stolen generation assimilating into white culture catches the boy's interest. He is now in the stage of learning and educating himself about Indigenous Australians. This is one of the many experiences/challenges the boy will face in his transition period. Not only will this give them a new perspective on Indigenous culture, but it will also lead him to finding out more information about them. In the end, this will help him complete his rite of passage and return back to his community.
Incorporation. The final stage of incorporation is set when the boy has his last encounter with the bull. During the end of the story, it is shown to have been struggling and in major pain. The bull portrays the boy's inner beast, containing his past trauma and struggles in mental health. In order to end the suffering of the boy mercifully puts it to rest. This symbolizes the boy putting his past trauma to rest by killing and overcoming his inner beast. The boy has now fully transitioned into adulthood after he asks a confrontational question to Pete regarding the boy on the bridge. By doing this, he also puts his dad's trauma to rest by confronting it and explaining how he seeks to make things right by speaking to the Aboriginal elder. To do this, he is forced to expose his father and fellow stockmen to tell the family of the boy on the bridge what really happened. The boy is now an adult, possessing a new identity and set of values pertaining to making things right. He's now brave enough and ready to repent and accept the consequences on behalf of his father.
After the initial two stages of separation and transition, the boy's story enters a final return stage with the ritual of killing of the bull, symbolizing the end of his struggles, yet also providing a sense of regret as at the end of his own problems was at the price of another's life. The boy wanted a solution, not just an abrupt ending. He still did not feel fulfilled after slaying the bull, which portrayed his past traumas, so he carried on to attempt to heal the problem from the root by speaking to the elder and family of the dead boy. The parallel between his story and the reconciliation of Indigenous Australians continues, and now that his beast is gone, he attempts to conquer the beast which haunts the nation's first people and the family of the boy on the bridge. The trait of the boy can be seen from his upbringing. Instead of giving up, he utilized what he already had to make something better. The final return has now made the boy courageous and determined to finally confront his fears of the past stories of the boy on the bridge, as well as acquiring knowledge from the stolen generation. The traumatic yet confusing childhood the boy had to endure was essential of his rite of passage from adolescence to adulthood. A parallel of the boy's life and the history of the nation's first people is seen throughout the book to represent the growing connection between them. The boy slayed his own beast, yet feeling unfulfilled, he turns to also reverse the actions of not only himself but his father. This is why the rite of passage is essential in overcoming the boy's past trauma and developing the boy's new identity.